Hey everyone, it's Rosie. I am so excited to have you join me again. So last week we spoke about embarking on a journey to get spiritually, mentally, and emotionally fit. And I'm so glad that you decided to come back and make this your place and your space for change, because that journey to awaken begins right now. So I'd like to address something right from the get-go, just so that we have a clear foundational understanding of how true change really happens. So last week you all got to meet Tallulah Bell, and she required a formal introduction because she's a representation of that better version of ourselves that we all want to get to. So Tallulah Bell, she's in complete assurance of who she is. She walks around with the right posture, with the right mentality, free of all hangups. And as we analyzed some of her traits, we saw that she could be a depiction of what living a spiritually, mentally, and emotionally fit life might look like. So how do we get from where we are right now to where we want to be? Well, I can tell you right off the bat that it's not something that we can accomplish alone. So today, I'd like to introduce you to the changing agent in this dynamic, or the X factor, or the catalyst, also known as the third person. So let me explain. The first person is you in your current depleted, unfit, and in some instances bound state. The second person is you in your emotionally, mentally, and spiritually fit version of you, the free version of you, the version that you want to get to. And then the third person, well, he's the one who's going to help us awaken and transition from where we are right now to where we want to be. But this changing agent, this X factor, he brings something a little bit extra that you and I don't possess, but that we desperately need in order to make the change that we want to make. So he's also the cause and the accelerator of the change that we want to see happen, but he requires a formal introduction, as we're going to be relying upon him heavily in the weeks to come. And it's important that we get to know him. So I hesitate to introduce him to you as just God, because there's so much more to him than that one word can encapsulate. And if I refer to him in that very general term, then you're likely to place him in this very general construct in your mind and overlook the things that he's able and willing to do for you specifically today. So I'd like to hone in on his ability to release and his ability to transition you from where you're at to where you want to be. So I'm going to refer to him as God the Deliverer, or the delivering God, in order to highlight that specific attribute and to place all of our focus on that one ability. So some of you may be thinking, well, Rosie, I already know God, and I'm sure that you do. However, the question is, do you know him as the delivering God? Have you seen that side of his face? Because that's where true awakening really begins. See, God is a multifaceted God, but just because we can claim to be familiar in theory with one of his faces or one of his sides, such as God the Deliverer, or God the Healer, or God the Provider, doesn't mean that we can claim to have experienced him in his full potential, at maximum capacity, in an intimate way, or at all even in that particular role. So we've all heard of generous athletes, and we're going to use LeBron James for a quick second as an example. So a couple of years ago, through his foundation, he launched a public school program where kids of a certain GPA that were graduating were awarded scholarships and were able to attend a university in Ohio tuition free. Now, if you ask me, that's pretty generous. But for me, and probably for most of you, that's just something that we've heard of, but not anything that we've ever experienced directly. However, if there was someone who had directly experienced from this type of generosity from LeBron James, and that person happened to introduce either me or you to LeBron James under this premise, then there's a much higher chance of us enrolling our kid, assuming that they met all the requirements, into this program and then directly benefiting from this as well. All because of that introduction and then the subsequent relationship that we've built. So True awakening begins with someone who knows this side of God, who knows the delivering side of God, to introduce us to Him. Someone who can be a witness of His power to release and His ability to produce real change, or of His desire to set the captives free, and of His gentleness in handling and healing those that are broken. And I can tell you right now that that side of His face is one that I happen to be very familiar with. So today, I'd like to introduce you to God, the Deliverer. And that right there, that's our starting point. It's merely our starting point. You see, if He did it for me, and I can promise you that I'm nothing special. I'm just the next girl standing in line. I was just the next person standing in line. Then why wouldn't He do it for you? Why wouldn't He release you from all those things and situations that are holding you back and keeping you from being that best version of yourself? But just like I've mentioned before, the message, it's for everyone, but the potential for real change, that's only for the believer, for the person that believes that God is not only able to, but that God wants to do it for them as well. So I hope that you are a believer of that today. If you haven't had the opportunity to pick up my book, Refined in the Flame, it's available on Amazon, and it dives deep into exactly what we're talking about, as well as giving some practical steps in the process to living a free and unbound life. Now, next week, we're going to be talking about our emotions and where exactly our emotions reside in us, because there is a particular place that they inhabit. And it's an episode that you don't want to miss. Until then, don't lose your place in line. Don't lose your place in line, because the next miracle can be yours. I will see you soon.